Hello and welcome, everybody. We are, as you know, the Movement Cafe from the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, and we are going to be talking about higher ed today. So good to see everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. And I am Reverend Rashinda Fairhurst, and I am in Oregon, not near Portland. I am way down the southern part of Oregon, right on top of California in a little place called Ashland. And I am a United Methodist, obviously. And today I get to be on the Oregon coast. I get to hear the seagulls and I get to look out and see the ocean. So I'm in my beach gear today. I feel a little cooler than usual. So hopefully I also look a little cooler because that's not a bad thing. So I encourage you, please add your name to the chat. Let us know who you are, where you are. We all are either involved in creation justice in our context or seeking ways to become involved. We might be looking for connection. We might be trying to discover what's even out there. And today, Kathy will talk about our nutshell, but I'm very excited about our cafe today. So come on in. It's good to see folk. Um, Good breath of that sea air wherever you are. Just getting ready for a great conversation. We're going to be hearing from four of our good guests talking about what's happening in the creation justice world and how it's intersecting in different places. So in December, we are going to be having a worship service, an Advent service as our cafe. We did that last year and found that lots and lots of people really loved that opportunity for us to worship together. We're a faith community, we're a faith congregation. And so that opportunity to worship together just kind of was really heart filling. And that was a good thing, especially at a busy time such as Advent. So, again, please go ahead and put your name, location, anything you want to share in the chat. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Velasquez Eberhart, who is part of our Creation Justice Cafe team, as is Don Lewis, also part of our team. If you need anything, just text one of us. And she's going to offer a little bit of an introduction to the movement and a little bit about this cafe. So go ahead, Kathy.
Hi, greetings everyone. It's great to see you all coming on. Greetings from Minnesota. I'm a layperson and a member of the Creation Justice Movement organizing and leadership teams, and also a commissioned earthkeeper. We, as many of you have heard me talk about, the United Methodist Church has a long history of talking about a vocation of creation justice and has a lot of really wonderful words and statements as well as actions that have emerged in the past number of decades. As folks became more and more concerned about the urgency of the situation with climate change, with ecological destruction, there was a sense of us all finding each other at Earthkeeper trainings, at conferences, and saying, what more can we do together? What more might happen if we start to build connections and build a movement around that? And so in 2020, what emerged after conferences in a couple of different places was this effort that is attempting to organize within the denomination that is the United Methodist Church, that's building off of the statements and the good work of groups like United Women in Faith, like Church and Society, like Global Ministries, like the Earthkeepers program, building and connecting and offering up conversation spaces. And so that's this movement cafe space is really a wonderful place for us to help build those connections, help those of us doing the work in our conferences and our local congregations hear more about other parts of the church from each other and from our presenters. And I guess Rashinda mentioned the cafe that's coming up in a month in December, I should say. But then also I want to refer back to last month where we used a number of those United Methodist statements to help frame how we might make decisions during the upcoming election. And knowing that that's still the reality that we're living in, I just wanted to highlight that from our September cafe and October newsletter, that there are a lot of wonderful resources to find on our website and in those spaces. So in terms of this conversation today, I'm particularly excited about this one. I have a personal connection with seminaries and with seminary education. I, in fact, was born when my parents were in seminary. And I think I've heard the stories of being carried to Greek class or something. Who knows what all I got to go to as a baby. So my parents are retired United Methodist clergy. And my brother, Tim, who you'll be hearing from later, is also now a theologian at Garrett-Evangelical, and my sister-in-law, Becky, not on this call, but is also works at Garrett in strategic connections and partnerships. And so it's a conversation that we have regularly around our family tables. It's maybe not the typical family conversations about what is the role of theological education in promoting creation justice. But I hope that's kind of the conversation that we'll have today. There, certainly been massive changes in higher education, in the role of church in our society, and maybe even specifically in the role in our denomination. And so there's a lot of innovation happening, a lot of really creative thinking happening in our seminaries about how to make all that relevant and the ways that that can be applied both theologically, practically, and through good relationship and community building with our congregations and our conferences. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and hope that by the end you'll both be inspired by all of what you're hearing, but also think of new partners that you may have to find your kind of where's the closest seminary to you and build some connections, because you will certainly find allies there in both the professors and the students that are doing good work there. So I think I will end it there and turn it back to you, Rashinda, to take the next step with folks.
Perfect. And I noticed folks are still rolling in, so we want to invite you to add your name to the chat and let us know where you are. I am in Oregon, just as a reminder. Another friend is here, also not from Oregon, but from the Pacific Northwest, and he just joined. So this is good to see friends, lots of folks here that I know and care about. So yay, I'm glad we're doing this work together. So we're going to start with our first speaker today. Tim Van Meter is an associate professor at the Methodist Theological School of Ohio, where he also serves as the coordinator for ecological initiatives. Dr. Van Meter also serves as the Alford Chair of Christian Education and Youth, MTSO, committed to become a fully sustainable campus, and Dr. Van Meter is part of the team leading this work. In the past few years, MTSO has established a 10-acre organic farm, refocused the dining hall to serve 85% of all food from local, organic, and humane sources, installed a solar array and closed-loop geothermal for primary academic buildings, and he's hosted multiple events, including interfaith dialogue for ecological justice. MTSO also has ecology and justice specializations in 3 different graduate theological degrees. So pretty wonderful stuff. Go ahead, Tim.
Richard, thank you. And thank you, Kathy and the team for organizing these cafes. So our farm's just completed its 12th year and had about 300 over the course of the season, different CSA shares, as well as all of that going on. And this is all wonderful stuff. But 2 years ago, we went through a re-accreditation process, which all schools go through every 10 years. And one of the things said by a couple of our accreditors, including the United Methodist accrediting the bishops, said, you need to connect what you're doing on your campus more deeply into the curriculum. And we agreed. It wasn't haphazard, but it was kind of individually entrepreneurial, professor by professor, event by event, moment by moment. So in the midst of a curricular redesign, which we completed a year ago and implemented this fall, we determined that we're going to have every incoming master's student take a class called Practicing Eco-Theology. And this year, 54 students took that class with me. And it's a 1-week intensive. About 2/3 were fully present, including people who came here from Arizona just to make sure they were in this class, and would do most of the rest of their classes online in California and several other spaces. And it's an intensive course that I'm actually receiving final papers for now. The decision behind this was we wanted students to know what our commitments are as an institution from the beginning of their academic journey, and not just kind of stumble across it as they go through different courses, maybe take class with me or with Dr. Christopher Carter, who many of y'all in the room knows, working in ecological theology as a faculty colleague, and others who teach in those areas. We wanted to know from the beginning. So in this course, we read a dear colleague of mine, Forrest Klingerman's book, The Intimate Distance, his essay, Intimate Distance of Herons, which I loved that almost every student struggled with. And it was wonderful because this essay is going to come back to them at the end of their degrees, and they're going to show that they have some more facility with the actual language of theology and philosophical theology. We read some of the work from Dr. Melanie Harris, from Randy Woodley, from Robin Wall Kimmerer, and kind of had those things. And then also spent an afternoon on the farm doing soil testing in different areas, and then an afternoon with a riparian specialist coming up. One was called Willis Run. Here it comes right through our 80-acre campus. 80 acres plus we own another 15 up the hill that we bought that we don't call campus because we have it in a different reserve. And so these students' curiosity, and I'm going to say a couple things about this, because you can look at our larger curriculum online through the eco-theology tab on our website and all that. This is the first class that has ended for me, and this may say more about my teaching than the class content in previous courses, but this is the first class that ended in a kind of a spontaneous eruption of joy. At the end of the class, students were giving up and just kind of offering, really a number of students were saying, this is why I'm here, again and again and again. This is the reason. This is why you stood out in this area. Now, the other thing I want to say about it is the engagement that students had, even walking up a creek, where we were in a drought at the time, so the creek wasn't that high, but walking up there and seining the creek, and we found a couple different species of salamanders as well as a whole bunch of other things, and that just shows that actually it's a pretty healthy ecosystem in the riparian system north of our little pond, or outside of our little pond. That even in finding those things, that sense of childlike wonder, all those things you kind of hope folks will engage when they work through ecology, happened in this space in that moment. And it was just a real wonderful privilege to both teach it and to have the support of some of our students who had been here for a year as kind of mentoring coaches in the midst of this, and some other things happening. So this now means every student who comes here for a master's degree will begin their theological education thinking about ecology and climate change. And because of my work and my own work around soils and agrarian responses in the midst of this. And from this grounding hermeneutic, we had one of the richest conversations about race and racism, framed by Melanie Harris's work as well as Dr. Carter's work. We had incredible conversations about indigenous practices and white colonization of indigenous practices, even as we think about what it means to be in solidarity. And so I think our students are entering into this space in a different way. According to my clock, I got like 3 more minutes, maybe 4, maybe 3, but 5. Okay. And a couple things about this too is I want to share this in a way that's not like, look at what we're doing. I do want to say that. But the other thing is, at the ATS gathering this summer, one of the officers of ATS offered a talk, and it came back to me in multiple ways, where he told the presidents and institutional leaders, do you know how many seminaries your students apply to before they come make their decision as to where to go? And he said the overwhelming preponderance of evidence is 1. Every student is primarily looking in 1, possibly 2 spaces. Now, we all have the anecdotes about, like, a student that we thought was coming here this year went to Wesley. A student might go to Garrett. And we've had those things. But overwhelmingly, we're not in competition. And so when everybody's doing really good work in this area, we're not competing with each other to get students. We're trying to graduate the most students that kind of can bring the values for next next possible vision of what it might mean. And I offered to talk some talks. I talked this weekend for the UCC here at the Heartland Conference, and I'm just going to roll back to that a little bit, because my challenge to the UCC, and it would be my challenge to the United Methodists also, is how can we conspire together to construct a resilient ecological vision for the world? And I use that word conspire intentionally. How do we breathe together to bring that into a new and possible space? How do we breathe with our soil, which is breathing, in a way that allows us to offer healthy food and the possibility of human health and creaturely health alongside that? How do we, honestly, y'all, we don't want to get into what I think about climate change, because I'll make Tim Eberhart cry, and it always upsets me when Tim cries. But actually, I kind of enjoy it, I gotta admit it. But overall, where I hold a sliver of hope is that the church can once again become church, and become a sense of that the parish, that their location, their space, the people there, when times get more and more challenging, can turn towards the church for resilient community, for the possibility of feeding each other, for the possibility of standing and welcoming the stranger. As I've told people multiple times over the last year, and I know Tim and Becky and others in this call talk about it, we have to be, in the Midwest, we have to be ready to welcome a mass climate migration. We have to be. Western North Carolina showed what it means to think about certain spaces as safe. Florida, there's another storm already named, brewing just outside the Gulf, that looks like it may come back in that direction or turn towards Texas. They're not sure yet. This is our new normal. There is not a time of climate change we have to hold off. We are now in the middle of it. And so how does the church want to respond in ways that offer space for thriving of humans, thriving of other creatures, and even the possibility of good news? So this is the kind of theological education I think we're trying to build here. And I know my colleagues in other institutions are also working hard to build the same, using their context in new ways and different visions. So Rashenda, thank you for the time to speak.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up too, Tim. So you talked about this joy in your students. They were kind of given some unexpected and challenging material, because we haven't really been delving into this. And I'm wondering, it seems like there's a hunger there in your student body to talk about this, to address this, to find a way to find the good news. Where is Christ in this, and how can I bring that? Are you finding that? What was that joy about?
The joy was about having their sense of reality affirmed, that they know coming here that their anxiety is real, and the world they're being asked to lead in is an ever more challenging situation. That's part of it. Part of it was the idea that there's a connection between the depth of their faith and the realities of our current existence. And for many of our students, Jesus would be a responding, that would be how they thought it. But we have a number of agnostic and a couple of atheist students that just are looking for some form of spirituality that allows them to think carefully about. John, good to see you on the call. Sorry I wasn't here when you came through. But so they're looking for something deeper and richer. And some of the joy had to do with our classes have become more and more diverse, with a significant number of African and African American students, as well as other folks coming in. And so this is the first time for, I would say, half the class to have deep and honest conversations around race and racism, particularly when it's engaging questions of ecology and who survives and who doesn't, and what does resilient community mean. And I also think people get happier when you take them outside. I think if you actually touch the place you're supposed to be calling yourself to protect and honor, if you actually pick up leaves or turn over soil or find a salamander, like all the things we did, or the farmers gave a tour and just turned us loose to graze. And so we're walking through the fields and see, I just pick whatever you want. It's fine if it looks good to you and it's edible. If you think it's not edible, we'll tell you. And so our students are are happy at the richness of the taste of the food they're all of a sudden having. So it was a really great thing. And I'm hearing from colleagues that this particular intro course probably set students up for success in the rest of the curriculum going forward in this first semester in ways they hadn't experienced before. They came in with less
That is,
anxiety. Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah.
balm to my heart. Addressing racism within the program has to happen. And you got my 6-year-old totally with the find a salamander thing. That is my life's objective in total, right there, summed up. So thank you, Tim. We're going to turn next to Rebecca Copeland. Dr. Rebecca Copeland works in the Christian theology, ethics, and biblical studies, focusing on the intersection of religion and ecology at Boston University School of Theology. Her research and teaching explores ways that classical Christian texts and doctrine can be reconstructed in response to what we learn about the world through environmental studies, as well as how doctrines can influence environmental racism. So, in other words, she seeks to read theology ecologically and read the environment theologically. More about her, Kathy's going to post a link to the full bio, but I want to turn it over to Rebecca so we can hear directly from her. So, Rebecca, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Rashenda and Kathy, for having us, and thank you all for being here. I am at Boston University School of Theology, where I run the Faith and Ecological Justice program, and I will drop that link in. We launched this program in 2019 and got it approved to offer a certificate the next year in 2020. The goal of launching this program was we have a lot of students who care about the environment, but it's not their number one concern that brought them to seminary. And so I wanted this program to help students see that it is connected to whatever their deepest driving motivation is. And so we designed the program to engage ecological justice from as many different angles as we could, and to give a lot of openness to different topics and engaging different topics. Since 2020, we've graduated probably about 20 students with the certificate. We've got about 10 to 12 working on it right now. And there's core classes that I teach that students can take to fulfill the requirements for it. I do an introduction to environmental justice class. So we tackle environmental racism and discuss that. We do a field trip with a local environmental activist, do a walking tour of a neighborhood near campus to talk about the environmental racism they've dealt with, the activism that they've brought, and the triumphs they've won over the years. I've recently begun realizing that as I deal with all of these difficult topics in classes, I need to be working in tools to manage eco-anxiety and to build resilience. And so looking for affirmations of wins has been really important, as well as practices of gratitude. So we do introduction to environmental justice, and we do have a significant number, because of Boston University, we have a significant number of international students. And so over the years, we've modified the class to incorporate more of an international perspective as well, and engage different ways that power and privilege get mediated by the environment around the world. And we've really dealt with various extractive industries. The school itself is going to be launching a research colloquy next year that is the Father Vincent Machosi colloquy. And this is one of our alums who was killed in the Democratic Republic of Congo when he left his PhD studies to go back home and work with people and dealing with the violence that was caused by illegal coltan extraction, and the way that basically our cell phones are funding disruption in Central Africa and other electronics. And so the school is building towards integrating this into different aspects. We had a travel seminar to Uganda this past summer, and we have a travel seminar to Brazil this summer. that's going to be looking at the intersection of environmental justice, conflict transformation, and liberation theology. We're going to be staying with the landless workers movement in the training camp, as well as visiting some of their sites in the Amazon, and getting students to look at and think about these different topics, particularly with the upcoming Conference of the Parties meeting in Brazil. We also do a more spirituality focused class, watershed discipleship, and Tim is absolutely right. Getting students outside is very important. We are here in Boston, very urban location. And a lot of people, when I first came, said, oh, well, there's no nature here, or there's no environment here. And so we had to explore how the environment is where we live, work, play, study, and how we get around between those places. But in watershed discipleship, one of their assignments is that they have to spend 15 minutes at the same place. They get to choose what it is outside every week, and form a relationship with a place and see it through at least one changing of the season. And that's been deeply meaningful. This is the third time I've gotten to teach this class, and it's really sweet. After graduation, students will sometimes take me to visit their place that they kept going to for the remainder of their time here. And when they introduce me to their place, there's kind of a shy pride that's similar to when they introduce me to their parents or their significant others at graduation. They have actually formed that kind of relationship with a little piece of the world here in their urban setting. And it's just very transformative. So the goal of that class is for students to learn how to get to know a watershed. If they're staying in Boston, I designed it for first years, but we always have other students as well. But it's to help them put down roots while they're here. But I know that most of our students aren't going to stay here. It's to help them also build skills to do this wherever they end up planting next. And so this semester, they do a lot of other exercises to get to know this region, looking at the history, looking at the environmental justice issues, but getting to know the species that live here, and thinking about their own traditions. We read Melanie Harris's work and talk about eco-memory and rooting themselves in their own traditions very deeply. And then I also taught a class this past summer, Religion and Climate Change. I made the bad strategic decision of teaching this as an intensive, and you don't ever want to meet for 2 weeks straight talking about nothing but climate change for 4 to 6 hours a day. That was where we really dug down onto practices of gratitude and affirmations of efficacy, because it was very depressing work. But we managed to laugh a lot and to start developing those skills of resilience that I think are so very important. So that's for students that are pursuing the certificate, but also other students can take these classes. And we also have a series of 1 credit skills building colloquies that students pursuing the certificate take, but students not pursuing the certificate can take for a semester, or they can just join us for a single outing. These are really experientially based. So we do 6 events each semester. And they engage different topics of ecological justice using different lenses. We try to incorporate something that is religious practice. We try to incorporate something that is an artistic approach, activist, educational, and spiritual practices. And so the first semester, all students have to do is participate and write a short reflection on what they do. The second semester, they actually take point on planning one of the events. So they build some skills on thinking about what they want to share, why they want to share it, how they want to share it. And so they might host speakers, they might plan an outing. We've had students put on conferences on topics that they were passionate about. And then the third semester, they do kind of a capstone project, which is to bring together what they care about most deeply with hopefully their vocational goals. And so we've had students design retreats because they were going to go into youth ministry and they wanted to try it out and get feedback from our programs. So planning a retreat or putting together educational material. We've had students organize conferences. We've had students write significant papers that they use to shape PhD applications. And we had one student just canoe down the Charles River and do reflections on an overnight canoe trip through the different neighborhoods and thinking about the transformations of this river over time. So it's very individually focused on what their vocational goals are and pulling together what they've done throughout their time here. We have now 3 PhD students whose work is focusing on ecological justice as well. So they're supporting our program from a more research kind of perspective. We've had students for their capstone projects organize 2 international conferences, one on the Rio Grande, looking at it as a border or as the center of a bioregional heartland, giver of life. And we had one on decolonizing ecological theology with speakers from Ukraine and from Indonesia and from around the world talking about these things. Other events we've done just during semesters, we've participated in Climate Strike, we've done art shows and field trips to the museum to look at artistic engagements with the natural world. We did a waste audit for our building with the sustainability office, where we dumped out the trash and saw what was sorted improperly and what was sorted properly and weighed everything, and then developed a report to give to the rest of the student body at our community lunch so that we could talk about how to do better in managing our waste. We've done film viewings, talks on environmental justice and pilgrimage in the Holy Land from a student who is really interested in thinking about, as long as churches are going to do this, how can we think about doing it in a more justice-oriented way? And we've had students from different countries in Central Africa pulling in resources to talk about extraction in Africa and the impact that we've had. So we've had other scholars from the university as well as students talking about the impact in different countries. I think I'm almost out of time. So I am just going to wrap up. Right now we're exploring, and this will be the breakout room that we talk about. We're going to be exploring the possibility of partnering with the New England Conference to pull together a lot of the United Methodist disaster response training, early response, team leader possibly, but also ministry of care and disaster ready congregations, so that we might be able to offer this as a sort of disaster preparedness for ministry in the 21st century credit-bearing class that we would be able to make available for our students, because we do believe that this is just something people are going to need to be prepared for, to incorporate it into every aspect of their ministry. So thank you for the time.
That's awesome. Exactly. This idea that if we think about 2030 as a sort of make or break a decade movement, and then we also think that 2040, we're going to see a very big change in the adult demographics of the United States. And what those impacts will have if you're being leading ministry right now, and it doesn't matter what age you are, you're probably going to be here in 20 years. And that ministry, whether you're doing that as a retired person or you're coming into that as a second career, or you're starting at 21, fresh on the steps of seminary, we're just going to have to need to navigate this. And so thank you for speaking to that. There's a great question in the chat for what is the difference between ecological justice and environmental justice. I took a quickie stab at that, but we have some truly knowledgeable people in the room. So if anybody wants to take a look at that question and support that, that'd be great. I want to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Timothy Eberhart. Dr. Timothy Eberhart is the Robert and Marilyn Degler McLean Associate Professor of Ecological Theology and Practice at Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary. Sorry, that's Chewy, where he directs the school's Center for Ecological Restoration, which is the core cool thing that he is doing right now. He teaches in the areas of theology and ethics, concentrating on the relation of Christian doctrine to environmental, economic, political, and social change theory and praxis. And so what I'm going to do is turn it over to you. And again, the full bios are just a link away. Go ahead, Timothy.
Thank you, Rashenda, Kathy, and others. I just really appreciate the invitation to share alongside such great colleagues who are doing really inspiring work, who have taught me a lot. And I just am so grateful for the role of the creation justice movement, connecting us across all levels of the church at such a time of immense urgency and opportunity. So there's a lot that I could share about what's happening at Garrett, but I'm going to start with the launch of the Center for Ecological Regeneration in the spring of 2022, thanks to a very generous gift from two Garrett alumni, Robert and Marilyn McLean, who spent many years working at the General Board of Church and Society. That launch was paired with the creation of a new fully endowed chair at Garrett, as you heard, in ecological theology and practice, in large part because our president, Javier Vieira, has identified the climate crisis as one of the most, if not the most pressing moral crises of our time, and has committed to making ecological justice a priority for the seminary. My guess is there's a variety of reasons for that, and I have to imagine one of them being the many years that he spent as an administrator at Drew Theological Seminary, and the impact of our United Methodist colleagues like Catherine Keller, Laurel Kearns at that school on his view. So with the launch of the center, I would say that the center represents a kind of a culmination of many years of ecological focus, including at Garrett a concentration in ecological regeneration, which we've offered since 2018. That concentration is made up of several core courses, one of them a course in ecological theology, where we engage a diversity of ecological perspectives, indigenous, agrarian, ecofeminist, eco-womanist, and more. A course called Regenerative Ethics, where we engage in Christian environmental ethics, looking at questions of science, moral philosophy, but also on a range of systems approaches or regenerative principles to equip religious leaders with ecological design knowledge. A third course called Organizing for Environmental Justice, which addresses, like many of the courses you've already heard, issues of environmental racism, equipping religious leaders for environmental advocacy and organizing. That class is taught by the staff at Faith in Place, which is the Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana Interfaith Power and Light affiliate. And it's a powerful course. And then a fourth course, a practical theology course called Earth Ministry for Ecological Renewal. So that concentration is available to all of our degree-seeking students. We have students in our MDiv, MTS, and many in our Master of Arts in Public Ministry degree, which is a degree for students who feel a call to ministry, but not to necessarily traditional forms of congregational ministry. Those not interested in a full degree, but interested in those particular classes, which are all offered online, can complete them for a certificate. And so we have an increasing number of students who are accessing this work from all around the country. In fact, we have a student from Germany, Africa, so really from around the world. We've had 6-7 years now of students engaged in this work, and several years now of graduates who are doing incredible, phenomenal, inspiring work. I'll just lift up a few. Some of you know Christina Sinks, who has been providing creation-focused liturgies for this movement and for our denomination. Christina graduated a few years ago. In fact, her project focused on offering worship arts and educational workshops for congregations to help them orient their worship practices to their local habitats. Lashina Williams created a nonprofit out of this concentration that brings together her expertise in theater and the arts and weaving performances together with narratives of the local habitats in which participants are located. She's also now on the staff at Faith and Place. And then an early graduate, Reverend Jake Oldmiller, has pastored in Indiana for the last decade. I love this quote: "The patterns and practices that heal an ecological system will also heal a congregation." So thinking about the ways in which ecological understandings can be woven into congregational leadership as well. Also leading up to the launch of the center, working with Tim Van Meter, with Laurel Kearns, with Abby Mohaupt at Green Faith, and many others, we completed a 3-year process that led to our being certified as a green seminary. With that, I'm really proud to say that following several organizing efforts from our ecological regeneration students, Garrett's board voted to fully divest from fossil fuels in the spring of 2022. I think we're almost now out of every one of those investments. So the Center for Ecological Regeneration exists to spread ecological theological understandings, earth-based religious practices, and cooperative solidarities for the just healing of the land. There are a range of kind of core commitments that undergird that work. Like all of our colleagues, and I think like all of you on this call and in this movement, we recognize that we are in a state of deep emergency, bound up in multiple overlapping planetary crises. And although these crises ultimately threaten the well-being of all humans, as we know, they bear especially upon those already suffering from a multitude of related intersecting injustices: race, gender, economic exploitation, colonialism, bigotry, etc. And we know that those bigotries only intensify in times of immense disruption and change, which is the age that we are living in. As such, we recognize that now is not the time for theological education as it has been, or church as it has been, or spiritual and pastoral training as it has been. Now is a time to be bold, to be creative, and I would say even radical. In this, I'd say we see our niche being focused on helping religious leaders understand some of the deep anti-ecological roots of the crises we face in what I would call malformed theological perspectives, anti-ecological biblical interpretations, spiritual practices that draw us away from our deep embeddedness and relationship to all of the more than human natural world. And alongside of that, then also promoting more life-giving, more just, more reparative theologies and spiritualities and earth-based religious practices. We believe that's important work. It's crucial alongside many other contributions. And so we recognize that this is not work that we are seeking or ought to do alone, but in deep collaboration. And so, like our other institutions, we've got a range of existing and emerging partnerships across church, movement spaces, nonprofit organizations, and elsewhere. We also believe that this work, though requiring global creative collaboration, is best done in particular places, best rooted in particular spaces. So for the center, that means living out our mission and vision in the Midwest bioregion. With that, I'm proud to say that the first major initiative of the center when we launched was to support a 14-member Indigenous Study Committee, which worked over the course of a year through a process of deep listening, deep research, exploration of potential partnerships with Indigenous-led organizations, which culminated in a 140-page report that provides a truthful, a painful accounting of Garrett's impact and relationship to First Peoples of our bioregion. It included a section on Indigenous theological perspectives and practices. It included an initial audit of our seminary from the perspective of the flourishing of Indigenous students, faculty, and staff. And it culminated in a substantive set of recommended actions for repair that the seminary might take up in future years. We're now at a point where we're beginning to facilitate reading circles for faculty, students, staff, alumni, board members, out of which we will discern together as a community what the reparative actions that Garrett will commit to going forward. So look for more on that in future months. One of our core partnerships this last year has been with Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church in downtown Minneapolis. What is part of Garrett's strategic plan to partner with congregations for what are being called innovation hubs. And so I led a 30-week class this last year called Hope for Creation in a Climate Changed World that included 30 to 40 members joining each week in person and online. And out of that process, helped the congregation to discern their vocation for regenerative reparative ministry in the years ahead. And they are claiming a vocation to be a cathedral for all creation. They're now organizing around what's called the Creation Collective, made up of a range of beehives of activity, buildings and grounds, energy, worship, education, food, agriculture, and more. So we're in year 2 of that partnership, really focused now on implementation. And so also there'll be some good stories to share, I hope, soon. Finally, and I'll end with this, we were thrilled to receive one of the Lilly Endowment Thriving Congregations Initiative grants for $1.25 million. That has allowed us to hire an associate director of the center, Dr. Garen Lorraine, who just completed his PhD at Vanderbilt in ethics, working with the amazing womanist Emily Towns. The grant will also be supporting what we're calling the Midwest Bioregional Hub, which will allow us to extend the work that we've been doing at Hennepin to partner with a range of other congregations throughout the Midwest. And so if you're in the Midwest region, or if you have connections there and would like to learn more, I've included the QR code. I'm also going to include in the chat when I get off here a link to our quarterly newsletter, our fall issue of what we're calling Field Notes. You can read more about our partnership there, link to the certificate, but also access the Midwest Bioregional Hub page where you can sign up to learn more. So there's a lot more to share. There's a lot more emerging. And Rashenda, it looks like my time is up. So let me just say how excited I am to be doing this work in collaboration with all of you and across this movement. It's amidst a lot of hard news and hard realities. It's encouraging to see this movement growing.
Yes, wonderful. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Yeah, there's that balance, right? The Tim Van Meter shared a little of that hard news, and Tim, I saw you're focused there, but that moment of this comes about, that pushing, Noah as he's building this lifeboat that God has instructed him, save everything you can, right? The pressure that put on Noah's combination story of, hey, some really bad flood is coming, and we got to get this together. And also, God loves us so much that there are mechanisms rising to save everything that we can, and that is what we're in the midst of right now. So I want to introduce our last speaker today, and he's going to kind of bring some of this together for us and also talk about some of the intersections at the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. I want to introduce Reverend Dr. Mark Davies. He is the Wimberly Professor of School and Professor of Social and Ecological Ethics, Director of the World House Institute for Social and Ecological Responsibility, and Executive Director of the Leadership, Education, and Development Hub, North United States for the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry at Oklahoma City University, where he has worked in both teaching and administration for 28 years. Again, his full bio in those links in the chat. And you know it's Methodist when it's a really long sentence that we string together all that meaning in every word. So do reach into those words to see where they go. And go ahead, Mark.
Thank you very much, Rashinda. It's good to be with you. And part of what I'll be talking with you about is work that I'm doing with others to create a United Methodist Higher Education Climate Justice Network. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail here in a moment. I did just want to say that unlike our other speakers today, most of my teaching experience has been at the undergraduate level, and the World House Institute for Social and Ecological Responsibility here at Oklahoma City University oversees an undergraduate program that's connected to ecological issues, but also peace and nonviolence and social justice. It's called the World House Scholars Program. And our students in that program are able to take courses in their general education curriculum that are more focused in on issues of peace and nonviolence and social justice and environmental ethics. And so we usually have 20 to 30 undergraduates who are taking extra coursework in their general education program in those areas. I've also taught environmental ethics and food ethics here at the university now in my 29th year as well. My work with the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry as the Executive Director of the Leadership, Education, and Development Hub really has focused quite a bit on issues of ecological ethics, ecological responsibility, and I've been closely connected with the work of the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, and also taken the time to do the Earth Keepers training of the Global Board, the General Board of Global Ministries as well. And in my Earth Keepers training, developed the project that I mentioned a few moments ago, the United Methodist Higher Education Climate Justice Network. And I'm really glad that we had 3 of our key leaders in our seminaries in this area speak with us today, because in many real ways, the United Methodist Seminaries are really taking the leadership when it comes to addressing ecological issues and environmental justice and climate justice. And I hope at some point we have an opportunity to have a cafe with some of our other professors and leaders at other seminaries, because in preparation for today, I took some time to learn more about what's happening at those other seminaries, and I'm definitely heartened at what I'm seeing there. So look forward to hearing from more leadership from those other seminaries. The Climate Justice Network that we're developing is meant to help our United Methodist related schools, colleges, universities cultivate more collaboration on curricular, co-curricular, and research programs that are related to climate justice. We already have a number of programs at our universities and our seminaries, but what we don't have enough of is what Timothy Eberhart mentioned at the end of his presentation: collaboration across the connection. And of course, the United Methodist Church and its connectionalism really provides us with a great opportunity, not only in the institution of the church, but also in our United Methodist related schools, colleges, and universities. We already know that a number of our United Methodist related institutions are connected with the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, also known as ASHE. In fact, we've had a number, 10 of our United Methodist universities have completed their sustainability tracking and rating systems report that is basically an environmental audit, sustainability audit for their campuses. And a number of our campuses are engaged in membership of ASHE. In fact, I'll be attending the next ASHE conference in Anaheim, California, at the end of October, just a few weeks away. And I'll be helping to lead a networking gathering at ASHE among faith-based, religiously affiliated institutions of higher education, not just United Methodist, but to see how we can collaborate across the board with other institutions that are religiously affiliated. Also, we have a unique opportunity among United Methodist universities because we have a collaboration already in place called the North American Association of Methodist Schools, Colleges, and Universities. That's NAMSCU. And the presidents of these institutions come together usually twice a year to gather and network and collaborate. And that's going to be one of the key partners that we look at looking forward to this climate justice network. We also have an excellent opportunity to center the work of our historically Black colleges and universities and their work in anti-racism, especially in relation to issues of environmental justice, environmental racism, and the climate crisis. So we want to make sure that we're connected to and centering the work of our HBCUs. I would also just note that we have an ongoing opportunity for persons who are interested in helping to develop this climate justice network to come together on a monthly basis for second Fridays for climate justice. Yes, we did kind of steal the name from another entity to a certain extent there. But if you're interested in helping us cultivate this network, the second Friday of every month at 11 a.m., we'll be having Zoom gatherings to discuss our work going forward. So there's really so much that's going on, but quite a bit more that we can do to leverage the power of the United Methodist connection here in the United States and around the world, and also the Pan-Methodist connection as well in groups like the International Association of Methodist Schools, Colleges, and Universities, IAMSCU, to be more effective, to be more impactful as we address creation justice in general and climate justice more particularly. So I'm going to be leading a breakout session where we can look at these issues of how we can coordinate and collaborate in relation to our institutions of higher education, especially as it relates to this higher education climate justice network. Thank you, Rashenda. Look forward to further conversation.
I have a follow-up for you real
Yes,
quick,
please.
which is what would, okay, so there's somebody on this call, I know there is at least one, maybe 8 or 12, just really wanting to connect with seminaries, learning this stuff. Wow, I didn't get a chance to learn eco-theology, or gosh, I'm ready for my second chapter in life. What next step can someone on this call or someone watching this recording later take to connect with what's happening or get involved or help support in some way? What are just Mark, I'm going to give that over to you, but you're welcome to also pass the puck, so to speak.
Sure. Of course, as I mentioned, most of my work is with undergraduates, although I do teach as an adjunct at St. Paul School of Theology here at Oklahoma City University. I played a role in establishing the St. Paul campus here at Oklahoma City University, and also I've taught as an adjunct with Wesley Theological Seminary in their D-Min program, teaching a course on Christianity and the climate crisis. And in my connection with the seminaries, they seem extremely open to connecting with persons who would be supportive of this work that they're doing. So I think really finding the seminary that may be in the region that you're located, and first of all, just if you go online to look at what they're offering, you can find, I think, centers and programs and professors that would be a good first point of engagement to make with those institutions. But my hunch, my guess is that those institutions would love to hear from people who would like to connect with them on this work. And I'll leave it to my colleagues who are full-time professors at our schools of theology to chime in with a little bit more detail on that.
We have just about 2 minutes, so probably room for one of our wonderful good professors to add if what would be your dream phone call or even just a good facilitating moment for you in connecting with somebody who might reach out.
I'm going to
So we have a
jump in. I'm
stampede to the
sorry.
microphone.
Well, Becky and Tim may have this too. My dream phone call is when I get a call from a church or a camp and say, come walk our land with us and dream. And begin to revision what's possible in those spaces. And then in the Midwest, I can bring colleagues in the agricultural sciences and elsewhere into conversations if need be. But I love to just walk the land and talk.
That actually dovetails so beautifully too to what I heard from Tim and Becca with this relationship, this bioregion. You know, until we recognize ourselves, our microbiome, we are big biology, full of earth biology. We do not exist separately from all the little creatures and all the little squiggles in the world. And we are sort of embedded in the soils and air of where we live biologically. So why not spiritually as well? Of course. So anyway, all right. That's my 2 cents. So not me and my dumb analogies have emerged once again. So what we're going to do next is we're going to move into our breakout rooms. So every one of the professors who spoke today is going to be available in a breakout room. We encourage you to hang around because it's a wonderful place to have that conversation, that next level. I've seen some wonderful things in the chat, and here's an opportunity to talk with them. You get to choose which breakout room you would like to attend. Don, do you want to launch those rooms and then folks can see what those rooms look like? Feel free to just go ahead and join. And if you need help, sometimes the pop-up to join doesn't show on your screen. So we do hope that our professors will join the room with their name on it. And then anybody who needs help to join a room, just let us know and we can pop you in the room. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see folks rolling back in. It's always a little abrupt. So if you were mid-sentence, we get that all the time. Or somebody arrives mid-sentence. That's always interesting because then we miss half the sentence, but we get the second half, and then we all have to ask what happened. What was the rest of that sentence that we didn't get to hear? Since we have just we're doing great on time today, and so I wanted to offer the opportunity for someone to, if there's someone who had a conversation or piece or thought of something in a breakout room that they'd like to share, we have room for probably somebody to do that today. Is there anyone who would like to share? Was there something that inspired you or something that it got you thinking in the breakout room that you would like to share with us? And just raise your hand. I can see as usual. Oh, go ahead, Judith. Go ahead, Judith Smith.
Well, we had a question hanging in our breakout room that I'd like to hear the answer for, and it was about what role singing and music can play in our work. So could Rebecca, I mean, it was addressed to Rebecca, but anybody who has something to answer, I'd love to hear it.
John
Go ahead,
Pitney.
Rebecca.
I'll start and I'll do briefly and turn it over to Tim because this question was asked for the person who can't carry a tune in a bucket. I'm the terrible Methodist who can't lead class singing, but we do try to incorporate art in each semester in some way. Frequently we do that through poetry. But when we do open mic nights, some of our students always do bring songs and singing as well. And we've done it through visual art. And in the Watershed Discipleship class, there's a lovely song, the Nibi song, that gets referenced in Ched Meyer's Watershed Discipleship book. And it was written as a celebration of water. And so we play that in class, and I encourage students to take a recording of it with them for their practicing place, because most of them choose bodies of water, even though it didn't have to be. And they take it to listen to while they're going through that experience. But song and when we do the Joanne Macy Work That Reconnects retreats, song is always a part of that as well. I just can't ever lead it. So Tim,
I'm gonna defer to somebody here in a second, but I'll teach a course this spring. I teach it every other spring, prophetic hope and creative practice, where we're trying to construct hope, and our texts are ecological poets and ecological artists with some music. I always have auditors, so folks are welcome to audit. One of the primary understandings is that well, y'all probably know this joke. What do you call a book club that's stuck on the same book for years? The church. For this deal, the idea is that we live in such a colonized time that even our scriptures are deeply colonized. We should read them as if we're Rome, not as if we're the victims of any story. So we turn to our poets, to our artists, to try to give us new words, new language, new vision for what might be happening there. And so each student has to work with an artist and a poet throughout the semester through the stages of grief, reality, and hope. But John Pitney has been writing songs and doing music for a long, long time in this area, and I think he would have an opinion. Tim might have one too.
And we are so close to time, John, so take it away, but probably just 1 minute.
Well, I have an opinion. My challenge is that nobody knows my music. And so, and I'm not the electronic guy. So mine is how do we share it? How do we, is there a way, or is it worth the time, trouble, and money to put together a interactive library of the music that we certainly must have across, certainly do across our many connections.
So I'm going to just jump in here, and we're going to start putting links in the chat to follow those up. But this is the worship team. So the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement has a worship team, and we have a page where we can post resources. And I know Sarah is on this call and has also reached out about that. I'm hoping, Sarah, I got back to you recently, but since I'm a little bit shifted, maybe not yet. But this is important. We haven't actually, eco-theology, the work of that, right? It encompasses a different kind of conversation, and that's also a worship conversation. So this is stuff that's all being rebuilt, right? Repaired, as Timothy Eberhart might say, the reparations of this. So so please can reach out about that worship team if you have music or interest, or we can support that. Kathy, you've got a minute to just kind of follow up with any last.
I threw a number of those links back in there. I know everybody's wanting to reconnect, wanting to connect with these seminary folks, and they are very willing. Their emails are in there. I would also, in terms of this particular question, refer to the field notes that Tim, my brother Tim, shared just about that. It features Christina Finks, who is working all in music and in worship and in how to really infuse that work. And then wanted to refer, this is not exactly related to this topic, but our last Movement Cafe and the last newsletter were all focused on important election resources that I just want to lift up again as we are moving into that even more deeply into that election season. So that's what I was gonna do, and I'll pass it back to you, Rashinda, to say a word about our next Movement Cafe.
Yeah, awesome. And I wanted to mention that our November Movement Cafe will feature Elaine Heath. She's going to be joining us from her farm and from her teaching. She is also a teaching professor in higher education, but she has focused on sort of a new monasticism, a spirituality of Methodism. Again, as we look at how does eco-theology interact with us now? How are we living into this new call? And that has been some of her focus. She has a number of books you might have encountered already. My personal favorite is Phoebe. So come next week to hear more about that as we talk about, and we might need a little bit of a healing conversation also after the election. It's going to be, hang in there, folks, lift up your prayers. This is really important work. We are called to life at an important time. And we are now going to pray out. So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn, who will lift a prayer and pray us out.
Thank you, Rashinda. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for your presence with us this day. As we depart from this space now, we ask you to bless and guide us as we work to be better stewards of your creation. Do not let the learning and conversations of this gathering die, but instead may they continue to ruminate within us and bear fruit in our work until we find ourselves together again. May you continue to bless those impacted by natural disasters and be with us as we elect our government leaders in the coming month. We ask this in the name of Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, all, for being here.
Amen.
Reach out if you
Thank
need
you.
anything. Much blessing and farewell.